Hi, and welcome again to the Live Better Connected podcast. Now, we've got a special one today. We're going to have a little bit of a look at 2024 as a review, not only for 2024 of the year, but also from Mobile UK and the mobile industry. But today, I've got our Chief Executive with us, Hamish MacLeod. Hello, Hamish.
Good morning, Gareth.
Good morning. So, it has been quite an uncertain year. So I thought I'd start this off, have a look back. What have been some of the big events that have happened in 2024? What do you think?
Well, I suppose looking at the big world, there's continuing geopolitical instability.
It certainly has been.
And in this country, somebody reminded me recently that England, of course, got to the finals of the Euros. Great triumph.
Seems such a long time ago.
Perhaps more relevant, we've had a change of government in this country. Change of government in the United States is coming down the track, and all of which is creating huge amounts of uncertainty.
And I suppose that uncertainty, with geopolitical as well, we've got the Ukraine war that's still going on, the American elections. I think some were shocked at the results, which ended up being quite decisive. And we've got President-elect Donald Trump will be inaugurated into 2025. And some of the things are equally as well have happened. We had the post office scandal at the beginning of the year. Weather has been quite interchangeable with few storms coming on, and in the infrastructure world, I think the UK is developing a bit of a reputation for not doing too great with infrastructure, and it was a shame. Again, we've seen HS2 cancelled, but we're hoping within the mobile world things can get a bit more positive. How are we in the mobile world at the moment?
Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, we've had a change of government in the middle of the year. I think in many ways it's a sort of continuity from the previous government, because the new government, as did the last one, recognised that our digital infrastructure, our mobile infrastructure, is absolutely crucial to the future prosperity of the UK. But I suppose after 14 years, they've come to the job with a bit of renewed energy and with stated purpose, with their 5 missions, particularly with particular emphasis on creating economic growth, and that is where the mobile infrastructure is one of the foundational sectors will play an absolutely crucial role.
Yeah, and we'll come on to sort of where the investment environment is at the moment, because we as Mobile UK, we did quite a big report on it at the beginning of the year. But in the mobile world, there's been some quite big events that have happened. 3 of the networks have now switched off 3G. Equally, we've had fraud has been an issue over the year, but we've met a milestone there, haven't we?
Yes. So we have now blocked over 1 billion sort of scammy text messages, which is an extremely important impact in the fight against online fraud, which is sadly moved from the physical world into the online world over the last progressively over the last 10 years, and that is something that as an industry we are absolutely determined to keep fighting.
And on that, you yourself have been doing a lot of work with the new government now and the previous government through the Sector Fraud Charter.
Through the Sector Fraud Charter. So we completed Sector Fraud Charter 1, and we are now in the process of negotiating, what Sector Fraud Charter 2. So there was a lot of big wins from the previous charter. It resulted in about a 13% drop in online fraud, which the government's extremely pleased with. So we're looking at what comes next. There'll be quite a lot of focus around what we can do in terms of more data sharing and that sort of thing, so that there's greater level of intel amongst stakeholders.
And so I think for listeners, 2025 will be another year of continuing to invest in protection of customers.
Correct.
And then another big milestone, obviously, we've had rural coverage, and there is the shared rural network, which the industry itself has invested £532 million, and particularly in the partial hotspot element of that. But we've now met those targets. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
95% coverage, 4G, reliable mobile coverage.
That was a major investment program that has been running for about 4 years now.
So we mentioned the investment environment, and it's a particularly challenging time for the industry. And we did a report, I think it was White Hawk Green, looking into it, and it uncovered and brought about that there is quite an investment gap.
Yes, I mean, this was building on work that the Digital Connectivity Forum did a couple of years back, which basically said that at current capacity, the operators are investing about 2 billion a year, so 9 billion over the next 5. But in order to build out what they call 5G standalone, that's where you have 5G in both the radio network and
full fat 5G.
Full fat 5G. We needed to boost investment by 25 billion pounds, and the White Hawk Green report particularly emphasised, the need, in a world where mobile capital is very mobile, water finds its own level, that the UK must maintain and indeed improve its investability vis-a-vis mobile networking.
Because sometimes it's forgotten. We're not just competing as the UK.
Absolutely.
This is global competition for finance, and where it's easiest to invest will tend to get there first. And we want to make UK one of the world's best connected countries.
Absolutely.
And in that report, though, we looked at some solutions, and it was particularly as we knew at that time of the year, at the beginning of the year, that there could be a general election. We put forward some solutions that could help. What can you remember? What
so these form part of our manifesto for the new government. We were looking at reform of the annual license spectrum fee regime, which would allow us to keep a much larger proportion of our spectrum fees to invest in the more challenging areas.
So these are like a tax on the industry for using the spectrum on an annual basis.
Exactly. The second we were suggesting was that we should reform the net neutrality regulations. So this is something that we've inherited from our time in the EU, which are very specific and detailed regulations. And Ofcom, when it did its review last year, suggested that actually we would better to move to a more principles-based set of regulations, which could be more flexible.
And that's particularly important as we move to, as you said, 5G standalone, be able to slice the networks and private 5G networks, effectively utilising the public network, but providing sort of separate networks within that public network, and net neutrality seems to bump up against that.
Yes, I think it allows us a much more scope for networks to innovate, and the ability to innovate is also absolutely crucial to its ability to attract investment.
Excellent. And I think one other one was overhaul the planning system.
Absolutely, and it is interesting that this new government is placing a lot of emphasis on overhauling the planning system, whether that's for housing, green energy, but telecoms is very much in the scope of that consideration, because it's so important to let us, we've produced a lot of data for the government that shows that we can just roll this stuff out a lot more quickly if we have more permitted development.
And that's particularly important. We mentioned HS2 earlier. That the cost of that has gone up and up and up. And I think, they were talking about 100 billion or something. A lot of that is down to planning. And it's often said that the UK is one of the most expensive places to build due to planning. But it's not just the cost, it's also the fact that the system itself is woefully under-resourced. And we've got a solution for that, do we not?
Well, the digital champions, we have been promoting this idea for some time, so that within each local authority there is a person who has particular responsibility for the digital infrastructure. So that's liaising with the providers to make sure that everything is done as much as done as possible to get stuff through the planning system nice and smoothly, but also to help release public assets to make sites available, and to help local authorities adopt digital services. They can achieve their efficient delivery of public services.
It's like having the skills on the ground. Because one of the things, we've been in the industry for a while now. You've been in a lot longer than I have, Hamish. But it's often almost like another language to many people, and particularly when you talk with the councils, and the way we interface with those councils is generally through a single application rather than necessarily a more holistic view of the economic benefit of mobile connectivity. So in some ways, a digital champion is almost like a single point of contact of someone with the skills and understanding to engage with the industry and help us through. And there was when we were in the events that we've done, including things like Connected Britain and Connected North, one local authority, a digital champion, said to me, they said, for us to engage with the industry, we've got to be able to coordinate internally as well as externally. And I think that encapsulated the idea of digital champions for me. It's building awareness and understanding.
Yeah. And there are one or two local authorities out there that have had some in post for a number of years, and you can see within those local authorities that they move this agenda more forward, much more emphatically, and the whole it breeds success and understanding within a local authority in a way that we see others struggle.
And we're trying to do some work on that of sort of how this works, because what we don't want is essentially the better resource local authorities moving faster and quicker than other areas, that especially in an area of digital inclusion where we want to ensure that people can have access to essentially what modern life is now. It's all online. So these are going to be extremely important. And the fifth one of our manifesto.
So, well, that was the business rates. So business rates holidays for new mobile infrastructure. This is a policy that was deployed in the fixed world with some success a number of years ago, and we think there's merit in doing that in the mobile world, because anything we can do to lower barriers to new investment will help that in overall investment environment.
And again, it's about making that case for incentivizing investment. So, I think some of the ways is business rates holidays, but equally business rates holidays in areas where it's uneconomic. So rural areas or areas where not spots it's difficult to build. This changes the economics slightly to make it easier and more cost effective to build in those areas.
Absolutely, at the margin.
So we had 5 key manifesto asks, and Labour did win that election. They won, some would say, by a landslide. And we're now a few months in. I think it was July, the election. I suppose the simple question is, how are we getting on? With those 5 asks, do we think we are moving in the right direction? Or are there areas where maybe not?
Well, certainly planning is now a live topic, and we understand that has been actively discussed within the various government departments. We've started to sort of activate that discussion in other nations of the UK, because of course this is planning is actually down to it's a devolved matter. As far as and then the government have also signalled that they will be doing their mobile market review in the new year, and we firmly expect the whole net neutrality discussion to be part of that process. We've got Ofcom looking at the annual license spectrum fees, but I think the government could do more as well. It's not just a matter for Ofcom. So there are certainly things in train. We are also, we have this public spending review coming up next year, and we will expect the digital champion debate to be part of that process as well. So things, no solid home runs on, scored yet, but I feel a lot of this policy discussion is active and progressing.
I think I would agree with you. Planning is definitely part of their agenda, as you say, and I think on digital champions, we know that they're very supportive of councils who are working in that sort of area at the moment. I think obviously what we'd like to see is that expanded more across the whole country. So I think I would agree. I think we are certainly seeing positive noises, and in the minister, Sir Chris Bryant, he has a background in certainly in technology and broadcasting, and has already come in with I would say a desire to move things, which I think can only be a positive.
Certainly, absolutely.
So one area I did want to touch on, we had another report, and I thought potentially one of the more interesting reports, and not necessarily as reported on as but we often hear, people are connected, but we ask the question of, one, how connected they are, or do they think they are, And then separately, what are the perceptions around the actual infrastructure? Because again, if you read the newspapers, everything is mega mast here, gigantuum this, and residents against that. So tell me a little bit. We looked into this, and the results were surprising.
I thought it was one of the more interesting bits of surveying we did this year, which I think revealed that really the vast majority, I think the number was something like 89% of our people that we surveyed, recognised that in order to get good connectivity, they needed to be living relatively close to a mast so that there was good thorough connectivity, which I think is not the impression you would get from reading the news reports and such like that. So, and I think it revealed to us that, and perhaps in so many things in life, but it was the vocal majority whose voice was being overrepresented in the whole discussions about where masts go. Because although our colleagues have got a pretty good record on getting stuff through planning, sometimes with a bit of a struggle, they do feed back to us that they're often compromising on positions and what have you. And actually those little compromises do at the margin again make a difference, because to get a nice pure clean radio signal, the mast really needs to be in the optimum position. And I think this survey gave us strong evidence that we should be a bit more bullish on that front.
I think you're right. What we clearly got back from the survey was that people understood that they did need to be a mast. It's not this sort of view of, always reminds me of an MP previously. Now we've changed government, I can probably say this, but the suggestion was the mast should be in the field outside of the town rather than inside the town. And it always strikes me that it's not the sheep that need the coverage, it's the people. So it's about ensuring that where the demand is. And what we found from that report was that people did understand that and actually weren't as concerned about them being closer to them as you say, as you read in the newspapers. The other part of that, the report, was actually how connected people were. And what we found was that most people said they had, I think, was it 1 to 4 devices? Yet the average number of devices was 14. And that in itself is a conservative figure because it was a single device. But, if you think of how many laptops are in your house, how many mobile phones are in your house, how many connected TVs do you have? So I think that number is very conservative. But equally, it's only a number that's going to increase. We talk about the Internet of Things. Where's your view of this all going in the future?
Well, the overall picture in the UK now is we have 112 million connected things, and about 90 are personal devices such as smartphones and phones. But the big growth area, as you say, is the things bit. So that's smart meters, it's environmental monitors, it's vehicles, it's drones, it's medical devices. All these different applications, and those are only set to grow pretty rapidly, I would say, in the coming years.
Well, I think I'm a test case of that myself. Wearables. For my birthday, I got a new watch that is connected and can tell me everything and help with my fitness. So I think the Internet of Things, as you say, someone described to me as it's connected devices without screens. So it's all the things in the background. We've talked about the fancy ones like autonomous connected cars, but actually it's more mundane. It's going to be, devices that keep people out of hospital, i.e. notifications to their patients if they haven't moved for 4 hours or something, which means they may have fallen, or connecting up to their loved ones to help with loneliness and providing that insurance and safety in the home. But as we start to go outside, as you say, you go to your connected bus stop that's telling you when the bus is going to be there. You've got an app on your mobile phone. You don't have to wait in the rain anymore. You can wait until the bus actually gets there and go leave your cafe or something immediately when it happens. So it certainly is a fascinating future, I think, we've got.
Yeah, and very much part of the sort of important unseen infrastructure of keeping our water systems working properly, keeping our energy networks properly balanced, keeping our consumption controlled in a domestic situation. So very, very important to all sorts of agenda around around healthcare, energy, water, environment.
Well, with the debate about electric cars coming around, it's this sort of energy. I'm fascinated with energy at the moment. We're gonna, homes are going to become local energy producers. But to get that energy around the system, rather than just coming from your big, nuclear power station or gas power station or renewables, it's actually got to be connected to the grid, and that again is where this sort of connected devices and the signals and wireless connectivity behind that is going to be so important. But we're changing rapidly, but we've got to have that infrastructure in place. Just the other one thing I thought I'd touch on as well, just for the question that's come about with 3G switch off. Why is that happening?
So 3G was launched back in 2003. And it was a good technology in its time, introduced the whole mobile broadband story. But compared to 4G and compared to 5G, it doesn't have anything like the data speeds that customers expect nowadays. And it's not a particularly efficient use of our radio spectrum. The subsequent generations are much more efficient, can have much more capacity on the network. So closing down the 3G networks and reallocating to 4G and to 5G is a much better use of our scarce resources.
And also energy intensive. I think one operator suggested that while it's 2% of its network traffic, and they've now switched it off, but at that point it was 35% of their energy usage. So there's a huge element of becoming, our carbon neutral side of things as well, is moving to these more efficient technologies. But we are, as you say, we're moving forward very quickly now to 5G and 5G SA. That's one of the big things I think is going to be trend for next year, 2025. I think
it's also worth mentioning too, the 2G switch off is now set for 2033, which today sounds quite a way away, but there is quite a lot of work that's got to go on to make sure that the modems and the connected devices that relying solely on 2G today have a pathway into the 4G and the 5G world in time for 2033, and that's potentially quite a big change.
I think things do come around quickly, and certainly we as Mobile UK will be looking at how to build awareness around that as well.
Yeah.
So we are moving into 2025, and just as a sort of final part of this podcast is what are your expectations for 25 for next year? Do you have any sort of what are the big themes we can be thinking about?
Well, I think our top thing is addressing this investment challenge and making sure that enough money is going into the mobile infrastructure in order to deliver on the government's missions. I mean, particularly economic growth, but opportunities for all, digital inclusion, their green energy targets, just to name a few. And and we will be looking to the government, obviously, to put in place that regulatory framework that will get us from where we are today to where we aspire to be, where everybody aspires to be.
So I think that's a definite exactly where what we're thinking going to be going. But also, I would say we also have a government very interested in things like digital inclusion and expanding the network. So I think there needs to be balance with that sort of investment side of things, with equally what the government's asking. That needs to be an environment, as you say, to be able to continue to invest and build those networks while also working to those government ambitions as well. So I think, that's been quite a comprehensive, quick chat in a shorter space of time. Again, everyone, firstly, thank you, Hamish, for joining us today. It's been great to have you. And this will be putting this up soon. We'll be going up, and we hope you listen to it. Please click on that like and subscribe to the channel. And obviously, in 2025, we'll be bringing out more with even really some fascinating pipeline of people, which we'll announce later as we go forward. In that time, hope you've had a great 2024, and I hope you have a fantastic 2025, and we'll see you on the other side.